Alrighty, so welcome back, and let's walk through some of the concepts you're going to need to do your proof of work file for this part 3 based on what we just learned about how to send the standard out from the shell to a file, okay, versus copying it in that kind of clumsy way we've done it in week 1. And so as I have my documentation file open and I have my what we were working on in week 2, I was playing around with this a little more to kind of see any other, and I was just playing when I realized something kind of at first interesting, like why did it do that, and then it completely made sense. And I thought, how can we, when we go to work on this week's assignment, only create one proof of work with output of all the queries we're going to write, because you're going to write several queries this week, okay? And so as I was playing around with that, I was making an assumption that wasn't correct. And let me show you what I have this, this is that same. Now I'm in the shell with that reference I talked about. And so now, because I'm starting a new session, or however, maybe I've taken a moment away and I've come back. So whenever you come back into the shell, it actually starts a new session. And that session then no longer the standard output when I do read and then q.sql, of course, outputs, as we saw in this case, to the terminal and to the shell, okay? So what happens though if now that I've already created that file, I'm writing new queries, right? I've noticed if I do this again, if I do .out and then I say that w2.txt file, watch what happens to that, okay? It actually, and when I looked at it, I was like, oh, it just deletes it. Actually, no, what it does is it's recreating the file. It's not checking to see if the file already exists so that it would append it. That particular, and we call these methods, doesn't do that. And I assumed it would. So that's good to know. So then I start thinking about this week. And keeping this in mind, I thought about how could we then, do that to where we only have, as we write different queries, right? So now, as I wanted to maybe have this query in here, right? How do we then have all that proof of work in one file, okay? And in order to do that, I have to actually do a little something different on the terminal to accomplish that. There's multiple ways you could do this. I'm just going to show you my general suggestion, okay? All right, so now that you've seen that, let's move over now to the instruction. Okay, so here's our instruction. So for this week, and we'll go ahead and set this up right in this querying folder. We'll be saving our queries into a file, p3-q. So part 3 queries, create that file, and then put that h1 in the readme file, and then put week 2 part 3, and then go ahead and commit that. But what I'm going to do now is walk you through how we're going to handle, because if you notice as we look through the instruction, where we're starting, right, and we're using that file, we're going to end up, like I showed in the attendance, using one file, commenting out the queries. Like for this first one, you're going to write 6 different where queries, okay? And when doing that, right, you'll want to, of course, what I showed before, which is make sure the query runs from the query save file, the query file, and then also do the proof of work for each query. Okay, so based on that little, I don't know, nuance as far as the way the output works, how could we do this easily, right? Because we don't want to have to, there's a couple ways we could approach it, but I'm just going to show you generally, and I think this introduces the idea of what we've already seen, which is multiple terminals. But I'll come back and talk a little more about the rest of this in a moment. So let's go back over now to here, right? I'm going to stop this stuff. I'm going to drop out of here, right, and clear this. I'm going to back up. I'm going to go into my querying directory. I'm good there. Okay. And now here, I'm going to go ahead and close this, right? So now I have my file that I didn't walk you through this. This is what you create. So as an example, right, select, and this is, where we're actually going to learn more about using, like on the first one, operators, but I'm just going to do that easy, right? First one, select star from long list, right? Boom, right? So now, yeah, select everything from the long list, right? So now if I want it, now that I'm gonna, let's just assume, right, for a moment, right, because you'll end up writing 6 of these. And again, I showed you how to write the first one, make sure it works, and then output that to the work file, okay? So I'll go ahead in this session, in this terminal right here, I'm gonna go ahead SQL Lite 3, and in this case, because I'm in that current, I don't have to do anything different. Good, I'm there, right? So I can just first make sure this thing, it is working the way I want it to. So I do read, right, p3-q.sql. Good, it works. I do see I'm missing my mode, which is fine because I'm about to show you, and I'll just go ahead and clear this, right? So I know that works. So instead of doing the dot output here, okay, changing that output, because right now this session is using standard output, I would come over here and I would add another terminal. Now, why would I add another terminal? Well, let's just show you because, oh yeah, so when you add the second terminal, it goes back to the root. So I have to, again, go into querying, right? Cool, I'm in there. Again, run SQLite long list.db. Okay, so now that I'm in here, I now have 2 sessions, right? And they're both running this. And this is where, you just kind of, there's actually ways you could name these, but you can kind of keep track as well. It's like, okay, over here, I'm running my queries and looking at the output to make sure they work. And then over here, and I'll see this here, I'm going to change the output to be POWP3, and that's the same file I'll use throughout all the queries I'm going to write for this work. So when I create that file, dot output helps when you do the right one. Now we create that file. Good, I have it there, right? And then I can do the dot read. Do I have it? Dot read. And then in this case, it's referencing the old one. So I'll do p3q.sql. Cool. So I see that file now, right? And oh yeah, see, this is kind of interesting too because I forgot to do over here, right? So there's a couple ways I could do this. One thing I noticed is I forgot to do the mode. So if I wanted to, and this is actually kind of, I hope this doesn't get confusing, but if I run this file again, if I run this command again, this is what I was showing before. It creates the file, again. It seems like it clears it, but it just recreates it. So now I could do mode box, right? And then I could do up arrow and run my, now I have a nice clean output. Now, the reason I'm doing this is that I can move over to my other terminal, and as I then, right, comment out that one, write my next one, right? Because remember, what you want to do is comment out the one that you are working on. Again, for that first one, you're going to end up writing 6 different queries using the where and using the operators as well. This one is fun to do, okay? So as I do this here, assuming that this query is different, I'm just for simplicity's sake showing you, then I can see over here, oh yeah, and actually I can also here if I want to, right, in this different session, run that query and see that it works, right? And I like to see that output, and so that I go, okay, over here, now when I run that again, and I can see this, then I get the first one. If I scroll all the way down, I'll see the second one. Okay, so what you'll end up having is one work file created and not having to figure out how to go back and have all of it, because part of what you're getting graded on, what you'll see this, is having all the correct proof of work, and in this case in one file, and I talk about it's appending it. Okay. Okay. So looking through here, hopefully that helps. And, again, you could actually propose to me another way as long as in each commit I see the proof of work file getting updated because that's what it's for. We're just trying to streamline this and teach you a little more about the idea of how these interfaces work or just different ways to also work with these kind of command line interfaces or shell commands, right? There's always multiple ways to do the same thing. I'm just showing you two different. Let's see. I was actually wondering as we were talking here if I could rename. Oh, I can. So I could do output. Can I do that? Yeah, so I actually could rename the one I'm using for so to show which one of those. So again, the more we learn about this stuff, the more productive we can come, and the more things as we learn how to write queries, we can use the tooling to our advantage. Okay, so coming back here again. So for this first one, here's your commit. You'll have 6 queries, that proof of work, and I just shown you here, right? I haven't in the instruction talked about what I've just shown you. I did talk about changing it to the standard out, but now I'm showing you a better way to do it. So just keep that in mind, right? And so you'll continue writing your queries into here, learn about and or in parentheses. You'll have 2 queries on this one, right? And then and in this case, after the first one, I have you start adding some things into the README file for your understanding. There are some great questions that are asked by the students. I definitely recommend listening and paying attention to those, and I will have you actually, as Carter codes those, also include that as well. So, but notice on the second one, you also have some notes, so make sure you do that, and I say use a markdown heading to show your content. So in other words, you have the major heading here for this section in our README file. So now inside of that, add maybe a heading 2, right? To add some content that shows your understanding of what we've learned, not and or in parentheses, right? So in this case, we're learning about null is not null, and then take some notes there. There are 6 queries here, 7 if you do the select all, which is fine. Either way, I wouldn't mark off as minimum. We have 6, but it's okay to do the 7th because we've done that standard one before, right? And so shows you where we're stopping here. I think it lines up hopefully, well, it's a little off, but right here. And then we learn about like percent and how to use these to then look inside of a column to have our queries adjust to that. And then you'll push your code and you'll give that URL, which hopefully by now you're used to doing. So here's the instruction. Ooh, I got to modify that because I no longer need the -1s because of the way we're doing that file. All right, hope you enjoy this one. It's time for me to work on our first problem set. Have a good one.